next up, known and less known methods of user tracking by Dejan Strbad.
Hello everyone. The topic of my talk today is maybe misleading, but I'll let you be the judge of it. Idea is to go through methods available. Don't go into too much technical details. Discuss why it's important and why it matters, and also I'll just at the end I'll focus on one novel method which is interesting to me, and I've been working a lot with it. That's DNS cache-based user tracking, which is interesting because you don't need browser and you can abuse cache on your PC to store sensitive data, or in this case unique cookie which identifies user. It works cross-browser, in private mode, and so on, but we will get to that. So who am I? Slide says it all. Lately I've been mostly working with machine learning on edge devices, especially in anomaly detection in area of industrial control systems. Feel free to ping me. Why this talk today, and in general interest in area of privacy, that goes to my limited government and political transparency advocacy. I was involved in Mozilla and in European Students for Liberty. Now, let's start with questions. Do you have something to hide? Who has something to hide? Let me see your hands. Okay. Do you care about your privacy, online privacy and privacy in general, or you don't care? Who cares? Let me see your hands. Okay, good. And are you taking any actions about your privacy? Are you trying to, what are you doing to try to hide your activity, let's say? Let's put it that way. Any volunteers to share your experience? Okay.
For example, blocking access to the Google DNS.
Okay. So on that. Okay. The guy over there also. No. Okay. Let's move forward then. So whatever you do, it leaves obviously digital footprints. It goes on multiple levels, from ISP providers, their infrastructure, DNS servers. People believe if they use, for example, Google servers, they are fine. Some of them believe Cloudflare is fine, but nothing is secure, and data is being collected, and you can be pinpointed. Also, quite big threat, and we all use them, are public Wi-Fi hotspots, because not only they collect data about you, they can get data which uniquely identifies your hardware devices, for example, but also they can inject content. They can inject ads, they can collect what you did, what you looked into over their public networks, and they can share those data. Usually things that are free, there's a reason why those things are free. E-commerce sites, some of us probably like the fact that recommendation engines are doing their job. Some of you don't like it. Wearable devices and IoT devices are even worse, because, for example, this device on my hand is measuring my heart rate, and that's pretty valuable data, for example, for insurance companies. I don't even need to know that they share data, but when I come to insurance company and ask for insurance, they'll probably have leverage on me without me even knowing it. So that's not fun. News portals are also quite interesting, especially now when fake news, disinformation, and similar things are popular, let's say. So by collecting information about you on news portals are usually linked to social networks. Pretty interesting profiles can be built, and they can be, and they are used in marketing purposes, which is, let's say, normal, but they can also be used to interfere, for example, in election processes. And also one, let's say, quite primitive example, electric consumption patterns. I'm pretty sure that my pattern is quite different than anyone else here in the room. So data is everywhere. We are leaving digital footprints everywhere. So yesterday we heard a talk where GSM devices or tracking devices were discussed, but they are the tip of the iceberg, actually. So as a result of all the data and all the digital footprints left, there's a bunch of data collected, and that could potentially, or usually, is a problem. So some of the most known, let's say, examples of, let's say, misuse of data are Cambridge Analytica. Okay, here's the example with Brexit, but also, I mean, it's not, everyone is talking about Cambridge Analytica, but if you ask me, Cambridge Analytica itself is not a problem. I mean, Obama, during his elections, he used Facebook, he used data from Facebook, he had data scientists, he had big infrastructure, so he was also using all the technology available to try to win. Now when Trump did basically the same thing, now it's the problem, and now everybody talks about it. Of course, it's something to be discussed, and it's something that's questionable, but the thing is that not only the Trump or Brexit are the problem because we don't like it. The problem is bigger than that. So other example would be foreign election interference. So on the internet, I mean, to have access to some of the data I mentioned in earlier post, you don't have to have access to ISP providers, to big government, to ask big corporations for access, because most of the useful data for some of the use cases is already left on the internet. You're posting on Twitter, you're commenting news portals, you're liking things on the internet, you're leaving comments when they're reading or buying things, and so on. So things are openly there in the wild, and whoever wants and have resources to do it can collect that data and can extract knowledge out of it, and if he wants, use it against you. Also, here is an example with disinformation, which is quite interesting in these times. For example, nowadays you can model virtual reality for each person who's on the internet. You can do that through targeting him with specially crafted ads, and you can also do it by modifying sites. One project I worked on, we used, we were collecting on one e-commerce site a bunch of data on users. Users were uniquely identified, and once we had enough data, we were able to modify content user sees before page is loaded. So basically, if you or someone else access this page, you were on the page before, everything was from the design, from the content was adapted for your preference. And that can be done in real time. You don't notice anything's going on. So that's pretty creepy, and that's, for example, what was extremely abused during Trump political campaign. And in past days, I've heard everyone is against government. That's fine, but the government is not the only issue. I mean, you have big corporations, you have different interest groups, and pretty much any of them is interested in your data and would like to gain something out of it. So thing is, not only government is the problem. So some say that data is power or toxic waste or new oil. It depends again on the viewpoint. But the thing is that what people don't understand, at least most of them, probably you do, is that once you have a bunch of data, you can get information, valuable knowledge out of it. So you may think it's irrelevant if you liked some page, but it is relevant, especially for someone who is, for example, looking into, for example, public party public page. They are interested in likes, they are interested in sentiment, so how people are reacting to things they are publishing and so on. And that's all valuable information. That's valuable information for PR companies, that's valuable information for foreign governments, that's valuable information probably for some other companies who can get leverage out of it. Now, all data contains knowledge, and knowledge can be used and abused. That's how things go, and that's something normal. We should not run away from the devices. We should not be angry about it. We simply need to be aware of it, and we simply need to, I mean, once you get aware that how things works, for example, someone who wants to abuse you cannot use the same trick. So if people start to ask themselves when they see some, for example, news, is this new, they start to question things that are listed as facts. At that moment, fake news and disinformation won't be the problem. Okay, that's not trivial to achieve, but that's, if you ask me, a solution to this problem. So some of the attempts to keep privacy on the internet and to try to avoid being tracked and your data being used against you are listed here. None of them is perfect, and honestly, I'm not sure if it's worth it even to use it. For example, one example people usually prefer to use is VPN, and VPN is far away from silver bullet. See, here are some examples. Also, guys in previous talk had good points. So 99 VPN products are run by same 23 companies. Other interesting thing is that I mean, if the VPN servers are in China and Russia, or Russia, I mean, if they ask you for data, you will give it. I mean, that goes by default. They are sharing data with governments, and also it's in interest of foreign governments to get people to use VPNs that are hosted in their countries. Here's the example with US, where senators are discussing to put more control into how things will be, how they will control their citizens, how they use VPN servers, because they tend to use Russian VPN servers, and once traffic is out of United States, okay, they cannot get to it, let's say, but foreign governments have that data and they can abuse it and conduct statewide attacks and so on. So whatever you do, you can run, but you can't hide. You can, I mean, the thing is that, okay, you will stay anonymous to some point, but you'll be uniquely identified. You will be uniquely identified by the data you will generate in the process. Not only that, that's usually data you generate using electronic devices and so on. But there's one other thing, and that's behavioral patterns. The way I use my mouse, the way the order in which I search for the content on the internet, the way I type, that's everything what identifies me and makes me unique. And the thing is that you can combine all the data you have, and then you're unique for sure. and then it's only a matter of time when your anonymous unique ID will be unified with your real name, with your real ID. I mean, people are creatures of habit, and sooner or later you will fail. I mean, if, as we saw in yesterday's talk, CIA agents fail, intelligence agents fail, I don't see a reason why wouldn't normal, everyday people fail. So the question is, should we return to caves, or should we fight it? What do you think? Who thinks that we should return to caves? Excellent. Okay, so again, this is a battle between good and evil, and good and evil is in the eye of the viewer. Again, laws may help, but I don't believe in laws in the way that they can prevent such things, and they can prevent abuse. So I don't think that's the solution. Like I said, I think that the key are the people, and transparency on how we are tracked, what's done with our data, and raising awareness amongst people on that topic. So we should definitely move forward. I mean, the amount of data we collect and all the knowledge that's generated out of it is also good. It's not only abused for bad purposes. So we just need to keep that in mind. The main idea of this talk was to give some overview of browser tracking, since browsers are basically our home when we are online. So everything starts and everything goes in browsers. As you probably know, once you visit some site, you're obviously not just contacting that site. Your data is being shared between multiple sites. Here's an example of Lightbeam project by Mozilla, which is basically add-on that collects data and presents it to user. Tracking usually works through JavaScript injected code, which is fine. You can try and disable JavaScript. There are some other ways you can be tracked, but the thing is that JavaScript is not only used for tracking, it's basically used for everything on the internet. And nowadays, if you disable, for example, JavaScript, I mean, web pages and the content is useless. So I will just mention and go through details of some of the methods. Here's the list. So the most used one is definitely pixel tags. They are pretty much everywhere. Most of us use HTML for emails, and these pixel tags are basically transparent single pixel links to the images which are embedded into email content. You open email, that pixel is loaded, and it reveals a lot of data about you. Other quite popular method is fingerprinting, and focuses on device fingerprinting. You can get, again, a bunch of different data. Especially interesting for me is when, I mean, you cannot use it in every example, but fingerprinting by the lens dust on camera is pretty interesting approach, and it's especially interesting, for example, if you're using Instagram. I'm pretty sure they are using this method to gain more information about you. One more advanced, let's say, fingerprinting method is fingerprinting by canvas. So basically you generate a canvas image with short text, and that's rendering in the background based on your hardware, your hardware you have, based on version of browser, based on fonts you have, and some other things. Times of render are different, and that basically reveals you and makes you unique. Behavior of fingerprinting, like I said earlier, tracking system is integrated on the web page. Among other things, page views are collected, how long you stay on each how long you stay on each page is collected, mouse movements, heat maps are made, scrolling speed is looked into. If you leave any comments, that's later on unified with all the data previously connected. So with combination of all the methods, at some point you are really uniquely identified, and then it's the matter of time you will log into some page, or you'll do something that will connect you with your personality, with your ID. The thing is that even if you're uniquely ID, that's useful information, because you can again be classified in different groups, and attackers or whoever wants to use this leverage can target these groups. So that information is not useless. So once you're identified, you need to be marked somehow, and they try to mark you in permanent way. To do so, the most popular method is cookies. Cookies, there are different types of cookies. You have super cookies, ever cookies, standard cookies, and so on. But the thing is, conceptually they are the same. The only difference is that some cookies are more persistent than others. So these super cookies and ever cookies, they are abusing different types of storages. Some of them are working in combination with backend. There are attempts that each user once he's identified, he gets a certificate for himself. So that's quite permanent. And one, let's say, novel way of marking you is abusing DNS cache on your PC. Regarding this abuse of DNS cache, basically you can create, there are different ways how to implement it. You can have fixed, for example, DNS records, and then you use different combinations of those already available DNS records to create unique IDs, unique patterns for your users. Other way is to simply create unique DNS record per user. Okay, there are some downsides for it, but today, technologically speaking, this is possible, and this is definitely a threat and a method which for sure will be used in coming days. One thing with DNS cache is that DNS cache don't care about private browsers, different browsers. It's simply on your computer. Okay, there's a difference between how that local cache works, but the thing is that it's cached, it can be refreshed, and so on. So it's really hard to get rid of it. And of course, disabling cache doesn't make sense, so you need to live with it. One other thing is that once you're marked with DNS cookie, let's call it that way, there's no concept of first or third party cookies. So with HTTP cookies, for example, Facebook can't access other cookies in your storage. But with DNS cache, if someone knows how to do it, he can access that information. So basically, you can be cross-site tracked once you are marked with this DNS cookie. It can also be used outside browser environment. So whatever you do on the internet, you are sending a bunch of DNS lookups. So you are on the internet, you can be marked, and you can get stored this DNS cookie. Also, these DNS cookies are also, as everything, useful. They are usually used in DDoS mitigation, but I think they'll have more success to be a thing that's being abused. Of course, limitations are time to live. You can set time to live on your DNS cookie, and usually it works, from my experience so far, up to 24 hours. But it depends. Chrome browser has different internal policy on how long they keep on respecting TTL, and DNS cache behavior is different on different operating systems and so on. So the method can be used, but you cannot rely 100% on it. You need to combine it with other methods, and that's usually what tracking companies are doing. Local networks, because we are all behind the net, usually complicates things, but despite that, you can pinpoint different people on the same network and uniquely identify them. On this method, there are very few public resources, so it's interesting ground for work at the moment. I've been playing a lot with it, but it's still work in progress. I'm especially trying to hunt down some big company who's already implemented this kind of tracking, but so far I didn't find any. But I guess that will change in near future. And more technical details on the implementation, variations of this approach, and so on, will be saved for some of the upcoming talks. Well, thank you for listening, and if any questions, shoot.
Any questions?
What is the best way to spoof browser fingerprinting?
Use different browser every time you use, so you do something on the internet. That's probably the best way to do it. Other way to do it probably would be to use a virtual machine and browser in it.
Okay, but doing that on network level, intercepting traffic and modifying.
You can prevent whomever is collecting data on you to not get some amount of data, but still they will get enough to pinpoint you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's done on multiple levels, so it's really hard to fight it, especially with this DNS thing. Unique DNS cookies can be, okay, obviously some garbage, some hash, and they can also be some meaningful names. So if you want to do, for example, what I was trying to do, I was looking into DNS cache, and I was trying to, using machine learning, filter out suspicious DNS records, but that's not bulletproof, because whomever is generating them can use meaningful names, especially now when you have a bunch of CDNs. You can say, okay, this DNS is something with that needs content delivery network and whatever, you know. So it's really hard.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So if you run your own DNS caching on your machine just for like resolving everything you do, and you set it to be like long time, maybe 48 hours or so, or maybe longer, or random for different addresses, would that be like a way around this so your DNS queries don't go out as often or as predictable?
That would help in a way, but also you're affecting your let's say experience, overall experience, and again there are different methods that they are used to pinpoint you. So anyone who's trying to track you won't store just one type of cookie. So even if you refresh DNS, they will check, okay, if it's in it, it's not in DNS cache, let's put it again in it. Same goes for browsers and so on. So again, not 100% that you'll run away from this method.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you and see you at the Rock Helix.